Hello and welcome to my video where I talk about things that I find fascinating, and I hope you do too. In this episode I'm going to be talking about the theory of mind, okay, or TOM for short, and it's the ability to reason about the mental states of others. So you can kind of think of it as like a hierarchy, kind of like a pyramid hierarchy, where we have the first three levels, which is identifying agency between yourself and the other, and the relationship between the two. So your theory about the mind of your pet dog is going to be different from the theory that you create of, the agent that is your mother, okay? And then the second part is recognizing that agent's goals, okay? So you then recognize their goals, and then from there you assess their intentionality. What are they intending to do? Okay, and a lot of this is happening within what I've mentioned before, which is the temporal parietal junction in relation to the prefrontal cortex, and mainly the dorsolateral, but also the ventromedial and the ventrolateral. All of those are in close combination within this assessment of intentionality and kind of the baseline of the hierarchy of where you get to empathize with others completely and utterly. And then kind of on the second layer of kind of what you do from once you assess intentionality is that you imitate. Then the correct response is how you feel they should, or how you feel you should respond to that person, and if it is good or bad to be more like that person. And then you mimic them, and this is kind of where the empathy comes in, because it's kind of in close relation with the next level, which is I guess the next level, which is projection, but it's kind of like the baseline level of like projecting onto somebody, and you kind of create this automatic level of empathy. All right, so you have no choice but to empathize with that person because of how well you know them and how you've assessed their mind and kind of the fantasy you've created about them for yourself. And then once you kind of get to that empathetic stage on the second level of the hierarchy, then you get to joint attention, where you both kind of are on the same wavelength because you've both kind of figured each other out. You figured out how to interact with each other and what is acceptable in this kind of dialogue. And then you both, which is so beautiful by the way, you both inherit a new perspective from this kind of reasoning and like empathetic way of, kind of relating to each other. You kind of actually take a visual perspective on that person, which is just so cool, absolutely cool. And then once you're able to take that joint perspective, you get into projection. You project, and then you simulate. You simulate what interactions are going on between them. Like, let's say at this point in the relationship, in this theory of your mental state of the other person, you simulate what they could be doing by the actions they take. So now we understand them, we understand their perspective and what we've joined in our attention. What do they focus on? And you're able to then simulate a reasonable interaction that you actually have no clue about. Where it's like, hey, I'm doing this today. You would be able to then go, oh, this is probably what's going to be the aftermath because of your level of because of the theory that you've created about the other person. And last but not least, mental state interference. From all of these low levels lead to mental state interference, to where you become a different person. Because, for many reasons, at least what I think personally is, I think when you get to mental state interference, what happens is that you actually start to change and be more like the person. Because what's interesting is that when you're actually empathetic towards a different perspective, you take on the best qualities that you think will be helpful in your orientation for survival. And that's kind of where that interference comes from, and it actually changes your fundamental value structures and processes there in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, changing your perspective. And all of it is integrated into this kind of one, kind of like here, identifying, recognizing, assessing, imitation, mimicking, empathy, joint attention, perspective taking, projection, simulation, and then mental state interference, where it all combines together and creates a new perspective. And that is why, it is useful for us to be a little more altruistic and not so egocentric, because of our innate ability to survive better and to learn from understanding other people's perspectives. And of course, you can kind of do a narcissistic approach where you just take out the best of someone and then trash them. But, that's not going to be very sustainable if you have a less egocentric worldview of yourself and actually don't think the whole world revolves around you. Because narcissism is a mental disorder. It's not something you can just kind of like develop naturally. Listen, everyone has narcissistic tendencies, but to be a narcissist is very difficult, okay? It's getting easier in the modern world, that's for sure. But technically speaking, it's a lot harder. And if you grew up in a place to where you were interacting with other kids a whole lot and you had good relationships with these kids, you're not going to be a narcissist, Like, not at all. And so, even from a young age, we've had kind of this level of mental state interference just from a more egocentric place. Because when you're younger, you still figure things out for yourself. And the key word there is for yourself, okay? So even as you start to, share your toys with your fellow classmates or with your brother or your sister, you're still doing that for your benefit, okay? But as you get older, this kind of theory of mind, this mindfulness and this perception into the minds of others around you stems from a place of growth and integration towards something better and a little less egocentric, which is why I have a hard problem with the whole notion that we're selfish creatures. It's like, not if we correctly grew up, then actually we're very much not egocentric creatures. We're very much communal creatures. We belong in a society, Oh man, I wish I could remember his name, but this one doctor, I remember hearing this. Y'all guys will probably remember this quote, where it says, the key to overcoming addiction is not sobriety, but community. All right? It's integrating back into society. That is what breaks addiction. There was the study done with mice where it's like, they had one bowl of water and one bowl of water with cocaine in it. Okay? And when the mouse was alone, they always went to the cocaine water. But when put in a group where they had multiple mice interacting and doing their thing, then they would choose the water without the cocaine. That right there is incredible that is a fact. I mean, it's the theory of mind is a wonderful demonstration of the integration towards a level of community that stems from a place of individuality, but goes into the level of perception to where we all kind of, philosophically speaking, become one, not actually, And who knows, maybe there is an underlying fundamental reality of consciousness in which everyone orients themselves and we're just one sliver of a perspective of this giant mind, right? Who knows? I don't know. It's definitely a theory. That's for sure. But it doesn't really have anything to do with the theory of mind, This is just about the ability to reason about the mental states of others, and then the absolute positive experience that comes about from that, if done correctly. And then there's, there's a lot of literature about how, there is a lot of the negative aspects of, reasoning about the mental states of others, especially if they're not good people. If they're not good people, well, then your ability to reason is going to start the direction towards that level of mental states being accepted across the board for everybody. You're going to be more likely for you to think that everyone has the proclivity towards negative interactions. If you get into a really close friendship or relationship and you really perceive their mind and you see how wicked and how disgusting it is practically, then you're going to have that proclivity to just be aware that people can go that direction and then kind of project that onto other people, which, is natural. It's the best way that you know how to survive. Okay? Which is why you have to keep an open mind and get perspectives from a bunch of different people and then see, being able to reason about if this person really does have those tendencies, or if they could just kind of have the normal level of narcissistic tendencies that stem from an egocentric worldview, but are still pursuing a more altruistic lifestyle, where it's like, oh, they have specific kind of quirks to where it's like, oh, they're not going to budge on. This is something that they need. All right, even if it's not something they need, it's something they do that they won't get rid of, which oftentimes stems from just a necessity for what you think you need, and not being able to grow from that, which is completely fine. Like, it's not a terrible thing. I mean, it's personally, I wouldn't stay there. Like, I don't want a reliance on any sort of crutch that is something that stems from kind of just my own ego. That is something that you should, if you have those tendencies, it's something that you should think about breaking through. And I say through because the only way out is through it, right? You can't run away from it. You can't just stop because it's a part of your fundamental value system. And that's why theory of mind is so incredible, because if you're able to reason about the mental states of others and really become empathetic towards their perspective, then you can take that and integrate it into yourself and then project that right back out into the world around you. And that creates growth. That is true growth. And that is beautiful. And also remember that your emotional responses to these types of situations and kind of the empathetic reasoning behind, the interactions, they're going to come first, right? They're not going to be all logical and reasonable, especially if you care, which is something that is going to happen if you take kind of this level of genuineness and honesty seriously. Once you do that, you're going to be feeling things and you're going to care about things. And you're going to have to let those emotional responses manifest. But through that, a couple of seconds later, you'll feel the frontal lobe act as a filter, applying logic and reasoning to then guide the actions. You really should think about emotions as a guide. Emotions are incredible. They are what you need. You need emotions. It is the baseline, fundamental, primordial, active system that pursues things and integrates you into an environment that you think will be beneficial, right? I mean, the limbic system and the brainstem, I guess, but I'm more so focusing on the limbic system. These were developed far before the cortex, right? I mean, your emotions are the baseline of everything. Logic only comes after. And so you should listen to your emotions. Truly listen to them and then observe them. Observe your emotions, but don't disassociate yourself from them. Don't push them down. Allow them to manifest, but you don't have to act. You can just see what the emotions are, and then step by step analyze them and understand the correct step forward. Okay? Man, okay, so the book Descartes' Error by Antonio Damasio. I'm reading that right now, and it is very good. It is a very good book, and it shows how, how logic is very dependent on emotions. And it is logic itself is a manifestation of values that create feelings. Okay? So we really got to focus on emotions and understanding emotions first before we develop our logic skills, because otherwise it'll just be incongruent and it'll just be unbalanced and not something that is worthy of a genuine experience, because you won't, because logic truly is a phenomenal tool, but without the meaningful experience aspect of your emotions, you're going to find yourself wallowing in despair. And you'll realize that all the problems that you had with yourself in this kind of logical state of mind go away or less of a hindrance when you allow your emotions to manifest and create meaningful experience even while you're suffering. To push through the suffering and aim upwards towards a better experience. That is going to help you understand this whole life thing and how genuine curiosity is to be worthy of salvation. And to be curious about things and to allow that innate level of experience to guide your logic. That is a truly wonderful thing. It truly is. So, all that to say, know nothing, consider everything, and read the book that I mentioned, and I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye now. 1,